So thanks for that. Sorry about that, guys. Just done it again. Always seem to be forgetting that I'm muted. It's a terrible thing. Anyway, look, let's start again. Seeing as we've got a little bit of time and we're a little bit early, welcome along to the live watch along for sprint qualifying. And of course, for those of you that aren't familiar with the format, let me run with you. Well, let me run it through you just so that you understand what is going on. So of course, Friday afternoon, sprint qualifying, similar to the normal F1 qualifying sessions that we're used to seeing on a Saturday. That will determine the order for the sprint race on Saturday afternoon. We'll have the sprint race, which will determine the grid for Sunday's race. Now, of course, for those of you that are just joining us on the stream, welcome along. Glad to have you aboard. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you are enjoying what we do. Of course, we're chasing 1,000 subscribers, so we'd really appreciate it if you guys could help us out. And of course, as you may have already noticed, I am flying solo this afternoon, Friday afternoon. Most people working in their day jobs. Obviously, I'm lucky enough to finish a little bit earlier today than normal. And that's obviously why it's just me for this afternoon. But of course, that's not going to be a problem. I'm going to have you lovely lot joining me for this session. And plenty to be talking about this weekend at the Austrian Grand Prix. Of course, Red Bull still flying high despite a difficult weekend at Silverstone by their lofty standards. Max Verstappen didn't really lose too much in the championship battle to his main rival. Sergio Perez obviously recovered to get P2 at Silverstone, and of course the likes of Ferrari will be looking to continue where they left off in Silverstone and get the result. However, I'm pretty sure one driver that will be hoping for a better weekend will be Charles Leclerc, a more boring weekend, which will lead to him getting a much better result than he has been at the moment. Of course, let's not forget that Mercedes right now, obviously looking in good form. They had a good weekend at Silverstone. They'll be hoping to continue that, and based on their practice pace, they should be a little bit stronger. May not quite be where they want to be at the moment, but you never know. One good lap from them and it could turn things around. Just a little bit of housekeeping on what happened in FP1. It was a rather interesting session to some degree. Max Verstappen fastest of everybody, then followed behind him was Charles Leclerc and George Russell. So it does seem right now that Max Verstappen still has a little bit of an advantage in his pocket. We'll have to wait and see how that sort of transpires. And then, of course, we've got George Russell in there with Perez, Hamilton. Magnussen was up in P6. Carlos Sainz up in the top 7. So it looks like Mercedes are certainly there or thereabouts, although they may still be a little bit behind the likes of Ferrari and Red Bull, as we expect them to be at the moment. Big news about Valtteri Bottas. Of course, he will be starting last in Sunday's race. He had to have a change of engine. So he'll be starting at the back of the grid, change of power unit, I should say. And just to clarify, of course, for those of you wondering why that would not apply to the sprint qualifying session, in these sort of circumstances, it applies to the main race. So Valtteri Bottas will qualify today, or at least expect him to, but he'll be qualifying to participate in the sprint race. So main race, he will start at the back of the grid no matter what happens. Even if he wins the sprint race, Valtteri Bottas will start at the back of the grid. Lando Norris also had to have a new power unit, but far as we're aware, he will start without a penalty, but then Norris, of course, had that red flag in practice, which caused him a lot of turmoil. Wasn't able to get too much running, which was a bit of a problem for Norris. And so he's certainly going to be on the back foot going into sprint qualifying. So we'll have to see how he can go. You know, he's obviously been driving very well. He's going to have a lot of places to try and make up, but certainly having sprint qualifying is not the worst thing in the world for him, because of course it will give him an opportunity to make up some places that he may have lost in the races this weekend. Now, of course, say hi in the chat, guys. Let us know your predictions. I know it's a little bit early, it's a Friday afternoon, so I'm not expecting a massive turnout, but it'd be great for you guys to join us for qualifying. And let me know where you're watching around the world if you are watching us on our YouTube channel. And of course, let me know your predictions as well. Just going through the predictions from the DNF1 panel. As you can see, myself and Courtney have both gone with Max Verstappen on pole position for the sprint race this weekend. Lee's gone with Charles Leclerc. Very interesting there, but we've all gone with those two on the front row, with Courtney and I going with Leclerc in P2, Verstappen P2 for Lee. And then it's a little bit different for P3. I've gone with Sainz, Courtney's gone with Perez, Lee's gone with George Russell. Definitely expecting George to have a good afternoon. Could do. Obviously, he will need one to recover from that setback at Silverstone. And then, of course, we've got Perez in P4 for me, Russell in P4 for Courtney, Perez in P4. So certainly those four looking rather good. And then P5, I've gone with George Russell, and Lee and Courtney have gone with Sir Lewis Hamilton. And yeah, that pretty much covers our predictions. Let me know your predictions, guys. I'm be very interested to see how you guys got on. Obviously, you guys keeping me company on this stream as I'm flying solo this afternoon. Just seeing 1892 Reds podcast in there, Liverpool-based podcast, a really good show. Definitely recommend checking that out if you're a football fan, or especially if you're a Liverpool Football Club fan. Saying if you're not first, you're probably DNF1. That's our new little catchphrase that we've been trying to do on the podcast. And of course, if you are new to the channel, we do some podcasts for race reviews and previews in Formula One, and of course we talk about all the big new talking points and some gossip and some filler episodes as well for non-race weekends, which I definitely recommend. Bit biased, but I definitely recommend you check those out. Jaffa Baboon, hi Alex, I know exactly who that is, don't worry guys. One of my favourite online PlayStation ID names from back when I was commentating in Euro Formula League, and also VRL as well, former commentator as well for that one. So glad to have you on board, mate. Hope you're enjoying things, and yeah, glad to see the karting as well. Alex is going really well, so you know, good stuff on that one as well. But guys, yeah, get your predictions in the chat. I want to react to some of these predictions. I'm intrigued to know what your top fives will be, and of course, if you want to add predictions for the sprint race and also for the main race on Sunday as well, which of course will be determined by the result of the sprint race. And of course, for those of you that aren't familiar with the F1 sprint race, this is basically a third F1 distance, 100 kilometers, and the grid will be determined by the Friday evening qualifying session, which we're about to get underway very, very soon, just under 10 minutes away from the start of qualifying. And of course, everybody, you know, there's no mandatory pit stops in that. Everyone starts on the softest compound, or at least everyone qualifies on the softest compound. I'll have to check that. But of course, that will determine the grid for Sunday's race. Similar format for qualifying, for sprint qualifying. If you're the first time you've watched sprint qualifying, it's very, very much the same as Saturday qualifying. 18 minutes in Q1, 15 minutes Q2, and 12 minutes in Q3 to determine who'll be on pole position. And of course, for the new rule for this season for sprint races is that pretty much whoever gets pole this afternoon will be credited with pole position. Contrary to what we saw last year, where the fastest driver on Friday qualifying was given the Speed King Award, which was very popular if you're a Valtteri Bottas fan, but not so much with everybody else. And pole position was credited to the driver that won the sprint race on Saturday, which of course this season is different. The sprint races themselves, different format to what they were last season. The top 3 scored points. This season it's the top 8, so winner gets 8 points, and it goes all the way down 1 point less for each position until you get to P8. So plenty to fight for this afternoon, and on a circuit which must be said, it's definitely a challenge. One of the shorter circuits on the calendar, only just over a minute per lap. It's a very, very quick lap, but there's plenty of opportunity for time to be lost. So it's so important for the drivers to get the strategy right, and it's really important for them to make sure that they do not lose time, because pole position could be won and lost today based on track limits. This is a circuit where track limits definitely gets abused more than others, I must say. So it will be quite interesting to see who gets it right. You know, it looked like in practice 1, Verstappen, as always, it looked like he had it nailed on, looked like he was very quick. And he's qualified on the front row in the last 5 consecutive races at the Red Bull Ring, so we're expecting Max to be very quick. I think Red Bull have won here 4 of the last 6 times, if you include the Styrian races as well. So they're looking mega hot favourites to win at the team's home circuit this weekend, or the organisation's home circuit, if you like. Most of them are based in Milton Keynes in the UK, for those of you that do know. Just looking at the chat as well, yeah, of course, Le Mans next week for the karting 24-hour. That should be really interesting. Alex, of course, I don't mind plugging this on the stream. If there's a link to any sort of channel or any broadcast that people want to check that out, then feel free to put it in the chat. That's absolutely fine, and I'll give it a shout out on the show. 1892 Red Podcast, talking about the tennis today, of course. Back in the UK, it's Wimbledon semi-finals day. Sad about Rafa Nadal not able to play, but Cam Norrie, the young British tennis player, playing against Novak Djokovic, and according to them, he's won the first set against Novak, so that's a good start for him. We may get another British finalist, first one since Andy Murray in 2016, I believe. Not that I'm much of a fan, but there you go. 1892 Red Podcast also saying Lee not having Sainz in the top 5. Wow, well, you know, it is a bit of a shock, but Carlos Sainz, qualifying, he's been rather good, but I would say a little bit inconsistent sometimes. And Silverstone, he done a mega job, and of course, you know, did a great job to get the victory. And it was far from simple, But you certainly can't rule signs out, but it's so hard to pick a top 5. And on a circuit where you really need to nail the lap, it really could be, you really could be 0 to 0 stuff. So, of course, we'll have to wait and see. But further than that, they've gone with Max in P1, Perez P2, so Red Bull front row. Haven't had one of those in a while. I'm not sure we had one of those this season, actually. I think Silverstone was the last race where Charles Leclerc actually didn't qualify on the front row. So we haven't had a Red Bull 1-2 in qualifying this season, so we might get one this afternoon. We'll have to wait and see. Leclerc P3, Sainz P4, and Norris is a bold one. But I think Sir Lewis will be P5. Well, I mean, it certainly would be a bold one based on what we saw in practice from Norris. Didn't get a lot of running done, and the running that he did have done, he wasn't able to do too much. Did about half the laps of everybody else. 5 minutes to qualify now, guys, so not long to go. So continue to get your predictions in. I want to react to some more if you haven't already. Jaffa Baboon saying, I'm pretty sure it will be live streamed on Alpha's live YouTube channel next weekend. So check that out for the Le Mans 24-hour of British karting. And Alex also saying that he is racing on that race and will be on the same channel 2 weeks later. So yeah, definitely good stuff. Definitely check that out. Of course, Alex also one of the hosts of the Box to Overtake podcast, I should say, actually. Forgive me on that one, Alex, which I've appeared on. Very good show, so definitely recommend you check that out. And Alex and the wonderful technical mind of Andrea doing a great job on there as well. So definitely check that one out, guys, if you haven't already. But looks like we're about to get started for qualifying, guys. Just as a recap, of course, 18 minutes in Q1, which is about to get underway. Of course, no mandatory tyre rule for Q2. I believe everybody will be starting the race on the softer tyres, unless, of course, it does rain. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes down. But some clouds in the sky, but it's an absolutely beautiful looking day in Styria. Spielberg, if you like, in Austria. About to get underway at the Red Bull Ring, one of my favourite circuits on the calendar. It's very simple in its design, but it is nothing but. It's certainly not simple in its in the way that you drive around the circuit, I suppose is no better way to say it, but a few DRS detection zones, only 10 corners, each of them as challenging as the last. And it'll be really interesting to see in the race some of the overtaking in this race. Of course, there's a lot of opportunities, particularly the run down to turn 3, famously a few years ago where we saw Max Verstappen passing Charles Leclerc on the final lap of the race back in 2019, unless I'm mistaken. Of course, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. But of course, very controversial overtake. But Max got the job done for the Red Bull team to seal an incredible victory. But of course, we'll have to wait till Sunday to see who gets the result. It's a great chance, of course, for Ferrari in particular to claw back some points on their rivals at Red Bull. Maximum points for this weekend for any one driver if they win both the sprint and the main race, and of course get the fastest lap in the main race. I believe that'll be a nice hefty chunk of points for them. So will be very interesting to see. But right now seems one-way traffic with Red Bull. A lot of comments, of course, on the news at Ferrari. A lot of turmoil and tensions brewing between the two sides of the garage, particularly as far as Charles Leclerc is involved. Hopefully for him it would be a much more straightforward, boring weekend, but I'm sure he would very much like to be on the top step of the podium tomorrow afternoon and on Sunday afternoon as well. Guys, as I was saying, just before we get going, just a quick plug. Obviously do some great podcast previews, reviews, and talking about all the major news as they happen with some great guests as well. We've got some great guests lined up, which of course I'm not going to reveal right now, but the only way that you're going to be able to see those and listen to those, of course, is if you subscribe to the DNF1 YouTube channel, of course. So make sure to do that. We're close to 1,000 subs. We're a few hundred away. But I think you'll agree most people that have been following this channel in the last 12 months will know that we have actually built up a lot of momentum on that regard. So, of course, that's all down to some of the great support that you guys have given us. So make sure to continue to do that. And, of course, if you're new, get on board. There's plenty of room for you in the DNF1 family. There's certainly no way that we're going to be stopping anytime soon. And we would love and appreciate your support. Of course, the preview for this race is out. Recorded that with the F1 YouTuber Aldous. Great conversation with him on the British Grand Prix. Preview for Austria and some of his karting ventures as well. So some of you might be interested in that if you follow Aldous. Great stuff on that one. Just looking at the championship standings now. Max Verstappen looking very comfortable at the top. 34 points ahead of his teammate Sergio Perez. And, of course, 43 ahead of his main rival for this season, Charles Leclerc. And then, of course, you've got after signs, George Russell and Lewis Hamilton doing a good job at Mercedes, the best that they can right now. Hopefully Mercedes will be able to rejoin the fight. We'll have to wait and see. And just looking at Ill Bill 91, what channel is it coming on? It might have to be a bit more clear about that one, Ill Bill. I believe that that's directed at you, Alex, but obviously if it's not and it's directed at me, obviously we've got Sky F1, but I'm assuming that's directed at you. That's obviously what we're watching. And of course, guys, we're going to be watching this broadcast live via Sky F1. So I believe it should be roughly on time with it. Probably a few second delay, but I digress. We should be fine with that one. But we're about to get underway, guys. So strap yourselves in. Qualifying should be very, very interesting indeed. And we're just about to get underway now. Literally seconds from the start of qualifying. Just looking in the garage now. We've got Charles Leclerc's qualifying form been rather spectacular in the last 5 races. 3 pole positions, of course. Had that 14th in Canada, but he was starting at the back of the grid anyway. And a P3 in Silverstone. And a lot of people were saying that Charles Leclerc was actually going to be on pole if it wasn't for a mistake that he made in the session. Anyway, qualifying has just got started. Just changing the clock now. And as you can see, the clock is now ticking down. 17.5 minutes to go. We've just got underway as the 2 Ferraris come out early. And of course, it's important to go out early because, of course, red flags and that may occur. So it's very, very critical that you get your laps done. I believe in qualifying, you can only do times on the softer tyres. Unless I'm mistaken, that must be the only reason why those guys are out on the softs. But I could be wrong. I'll just keep an eye on that one. But if anyone knows, do let me know in the chat. And as much as I love the sport, I'm not aware of every single rule that they have, I'm afraid. Bargav saying, hey Bargav, hope you're well. And yeah, Arsenal are playing in half an hour. Their pre-season starts today in Germany. So as a bit of an Arsenal fan, hopefully the team has a good season. There's certainly some excitement brewing in the camp, but obviously at this point in the season, you can never really read too much into it. You just have to wait and see who they bring in and who leaves, and of course how they get on when the season gets going. Hopefully it starts off better than last season, losing the first 3 games on the spin. We'd want to avoid a similar situation if we try and get back into the top 4, where I certainly hope that we will be come the end of the season. But anyway, enough about football. Let's get into Formula 1. Guys, keep your predictions coming in. Only seen a few so far, so yeah, keep them coming in, guys. We've got Esteban Ocon in the garage, hoping for some better fortunes this weekend. Of course, retiring after that mechanical failure at Silverstone, which brought out that late safety car, which then produced all the drama, which I'm sure many of us enjoyed. Some great racing that came from that one. We've got Fernando Alonso in the garage. He looked relatively fast this morning. The Alpines do look very, very pacey. One of the fastest in the midfield, I would say, probably arguably the fastest all round from circuit to circuit when you compare them. The only teams faster, obviously, the leading 3, Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes. First flying lap now for Charles Leclerc as he goes into turn 1. This will be an important weekend for him. He really needs to try and keep that good luck going this weekend if he can get the result that he needs to try and close the gap in the championship. Of course, the Red Bull's looking fast in the speed traps. Some suspect Ferrari may have been holding back on their engines a little bit in practice, but we'll have to wait and see what they do now as Charles Leclerc comes down into turn 4. An area of the track where he had a few battles with Sergio Perez last season. Of course, the old track limits and overtaking standards and driving standards debate brewing from a few of those instances. And of course, they certainly haven't got any easier based on what we saw with Silverstone, and some of the rule clarifications that we saw on social media certainly did not make things any easier. And I'm pretty sure that'll be the last that well, we won't be the last that we'll see of that one. Just looking in the background, a lot of smoke, orange smoke, that is. The Orange Army, the Max Verstappen fans, all in their waves. It's absolutely stunning scene, seeing it all packed out in the stands. I'm sure they're going to make a lot of noise, and no prizes for guessing who they want to win this weekend. Maybe some McLaren fans in there as well, seeing as they wear the same colour attire. But Charles Leclerc, first lap over the line, 1 minute 6.7. A few tenths down on what he managed in FP1. As Sainz goes fastest of all, 106.3. So that's a bit more like it. That's 7 tenths faster than what Sainz managed in FP1. So he certainly found his mojo. And as I said, guys, this track is all about rhythm. If your car is fast and you manage to hook the right lap and hook it all together, and of course keep it within the track limits, you can certainly go well, as we saw in the F2 qualifying earlier, for those of you that watched that one. We've got Zhou Guanyu in the garage. Great to see Zhou Guanyu looking well and feeling good. It was a horrible crash that happened to him in Silverstone, and glad to see that he's okay. And of course, the Halo and the safety measures doing the job impeccably well. Quick note on Sainz's time. Talking about track limits, so Sainz's time has been deleted Looks like he breached track limits. Not sure where, of course. I'm not getting the audio on this, unfortunately, but he will have to go around again. And, track limits at turn 3. So that would have been the final corner. We've just gone a little bit wide there, which is a shame because I don't think you really gained too much time there. So he'll be disappointed for that one to not count, but he's going to have to go around again. Be interesting to see if he's fueled up to do another run or if he have to change his tyres. But Carlos Sainz looked like a good time, but he's going to have to go round again. It was only 600ths off what Max Verstappen managed in FP1. Just seeing a replay of it now. Sainz coming through turn 10. And obviously, you've got to stay. I'm not sure if that's breaching track limits, if I'm perfectly honest. I'm looking at it here. The angle he had. Actually, no, tell a lie. Looking at the angle from the outside, yeah, he's definitely gone over the track limits. So, yeah, that one is deleted. It's the white line on the edge of the corner, not the edge of the curbs, and flatter curbs on a circuit like this. And of course, haven't seen too many sausage curbs, which is a good thing. I'm sure a lot of us would agree that the sausage curbs certainly need to find their way out of Formula 1. They're dangerous, they cause accidents, and I do not see the value of having them. I know people say, oh, well, it's to keep the cars within the lines, but honestly, I think they're more danger than they're actually worth right now. So it's good to see that we aren't seeing any sausage curbs on the circuit. Sergio Perez has gone up to P2, 400ths off Leclerc. And we've got Alonso going fastest of all, 106.7 for Fernando Alonso. So a good effort from him, 4 tenths faster than what he managed this morning. Kevin Magnussen, another driver who went well this morning in P6. He's just gone fastest, 106.6. So the track is ramping up. Track evolution will be very quick. Mick Schumacher now goes fastest. A Haas 1-2 in qualifying, and he's certainly got to love to see it. Great result for him at Silverstone. Got in the points. Managed to get P8. Great battle with champion Max Verstappen towards the end of the race, although some felt Max was a little bit over the line with his defensive manoeuvres. But great to see Mick Schumacher in the points, and hopefully that will now give him the confidence to push on from this and do well. Charles Leclerc now goes fastest, 106.2. Haven't seen Max Verstappen or the 2 Mercedes out in qualifying yet. They're on their outlap, so we'll see from the Masu. Carlos Sainz now coming through the final corner. The next lap was deleted. He goes P2, 106.3 again, so just 300ths off what he managed in the first run. Will be interesting to see if he can keep that one, because obviously they normally say that when you go wide and breach track limits on the run to the first corner on the previous lap, they do tend to cancel or delete the lap that follows it. So interesting to see if he keeps that one, but we'll keep an eye on that one. Bubba Ray Dudley in the chat. Leclerc could do with another pole to help, but it's feeling like when Red Bull get it right, Ferrari can't get close in the race proper. Do you have faith that Ferrari can match Red Bull for race pace? Well, it's a hard one. It's a really good question. I certainly think from what we've seen in Canada and what we saw, what we could have seen in Silverstone, it's hard to tell if Charles Leclerc in particular could have kept up with Max Verstappen. Of course, Sainz's pace in Canada towards the end of the race was encouraging, but you can't help but feel from what we've seen in the last couple of races that Charles Leclerc clearly has a pace advantage on his teammate at this point in time. So I'll be honest with you, I think it's hard to say. I still think Red Bull have the edge in race pace, but because of Leclerc's damage and obviously Verstappen's issue in Silverstone and obviously Canada, Leclerc was at the back, I don't think we can really tell. If I was to hazard a bet on it, I would still say Red Bull have the advantage in race pace, but I feel like their straight line speed advantage is nowhere near as good as it was back in Miami or in Jeddah, for example, when it looked like they really had an advantage on the Ferraris in that regard. So in the race trim, Red Bull still looked the car to beat. Ferrari certainly a lot closer, I feel, than they probably were. But of course, Leclerc has been hampered recently by some bad luck and strategy calls. Just watching Max Verstappen now on his first flying lap as Fernando Alonso goes fastest of all, 1/1000th of a second faster. Perez beats that. Max Verstappen going quite a bit wide. Be interesting to see if that lap will count. But he goes top of the timesheets for now. Red Bull 1-2, 106.0, 9.5 minutes left in Q1. Of course, this does not determine the grid. We've still got 2 more sessions left to go. We've got Q2 and Q3, and this is for the sprint race tomorrow. So it should be very interesting. And as I predicted, Max Verstappen's time has been deleted for exceeding track limits at turn 10. I thought he went a little bit wide at turn 10, so he will not be allowed to keep that time. He will have to go around again, and it's good to see, although that, again, very, very close. One angle makes it look like he's kept the wheel on the road, and then this one, yes, he has gone wide. So It's a strict cop, but it's a fair one nonetheless. Just watching a replay now of Sir Lewis Hamilton coming up to turn 3. Goes very wide, loses the back end. And for whatever reason, that Mercedes does not look fully hooked up as of yet. So will be interesting to see how he gets on this weekend. Mercedes certainly encouraged by the pace that they showed at Silverstone. I am too. I certainly think they looked a lot stronger. Some saying that Lewis had the pace to win. I'm not so sure. I think if it wasn't for the safety car, I think Charles Leclerc probably would have won that race with a broken front wing, mind you, as well. So that's impressive in its own right. But Sir Lewis certainly showing that he was in the fight and giving the Ferraris a lot to think about. And let's not forget, of course, if Max Verstappen was still in that race, there's a very good chance he probably would have won that himself. Anyway, I digress. You get your opinions in and let me know what you think. We've got Kevin Magnussen now on a flying lap. So Lewis Hamilton has just gone purple in the first sector, 0.03 of a second faster than Perez. So the Mercedes is rather slippery in a straight line, and that might be needed this afternoon. K-Mag goes into P4. Track evolution really ramping up on this circuit. So expect the times to come tumbling down. I don't think anyone is really safe at the moment. George Russell into P4 as Sir Lewis Hamilton now comes across the line and he goes fastest of all, 106.079. Impressive stuff from the 7-time world champion, and who currently is not enjoying his longest streak without a race win now. After the British Grand Prix, it's now 11 races since Sir Lewis Hamilton last won a Grand Prix at the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix last season in his entire career. It's crazy to think that someone like Lewis Hamilton, who's still doing incredibly well this season, despite the problems that he's had, is now enjoying his, well, losing streak, I suppose, for a lack of a better way of putting it. But I'm sure at some point they'll get it right. I'd be very surprised if Sir Lewis Hamilton doesn't get a win this season, but you never know. The competition is very fierce this season. Anyway, right now it's Yuki Tsunoda, a driver who's had a bad last couple of races by his usual standards, really needs to turn it around. He's currently on the bubble in P15 with a 107.3. Then we've got Gasly, Ricciardo, Vettel, Verstappen, and Latifi, who hasn't set a time yet, in the bottom 5. Alex Albon up into P8 now with 106.5. 4 tenths off Sir Lewis Hamilton's pace right now, on board with Danny Ricciardo, who's now just under 4 tenths of a second up on Yuki Tsunoda. Gets a little bit of a toe off the Ferrari coming through turn 8, but I'm sure probably not worth much to him. Albon's time's been deleted, I should say, so he's dropped down to 15. He's now the driver at risk now, as Daniel Ricciardo coming across the line needs to have a good qualifying session up to P11. Takes him ahead of his teammate, just outside the top 10, but right now, just as a quick rundown before we get to the 5-minute mark, qualifying looks like this. We've got Hamilton, Perez, Alonso, Leclerc, Russell, Sainz, Mick Schumacher, Ocon, Magnussen and Bottas in the top 10, with Ricciardo, Zhou, Norris, Latifi and Stroll. Latifi jumping into the top 15 with his first run, but I'm expecting the other drivers to improve very soon, especially the man that I'm watching right now, Max Verstappen, the reigning defending world champion. Purple in sector 1. Half a tenth faster than Sir Lewis Hamilton managed in the first sector. The Red Bull looking very, very rapid in a straight line. Looking rapid almost everywhere right now on a Formula 1 circuit. He's certainly up on the time to beat, which at the moment is Nicholas Latifi's time. But I think we all know that Max Verstappen is gunning for pole position this afternoon at a circuit that has been very kind to him in the last few years. Coming across the line now, first man into the 1 minute 5s, 1 minute 5.8. So the track is ramping up. Max Verstappen pleasing the Orange Army, the Dutch fans, as Carlos Sainz goes faster, 105.6. So Carlos Sainz starting to bring out the toys, as is Charles Leclerc, who's gone even faster with 105.4. So Ferrari look like they've turned the wick up a little bit on these engines. Obviously, reliability has been an issue for them, but there's certainly no question that the performance is certainly there for Ferrari, and Charles Leclerc and Sainz proving that Ferrari are very much in this fight so far. Sebastian Vettel, a driver we haven't really talked about much so far this weekend, wearing the special crash helmet to raise awareness for the importance of bees around the world. And of course, I'm no scientist, but I certainly know that's a very worthy cause. So great stuff from him. It's a fantastic looking crash helmet. It reminds me of the 1998 Jordan with the Hornet on the front of the car. Very reminiscent of that. Looks absolutely brilliant. And Sebastian Vettel has very, very good looking crash helmets in Formula 1. I think a lot of people will agree with that one, but definitely needs to put that together and get a good time on the board now, as the clock now just under 4 minutes before the end of qualifying. Guys, get your thoughts into quali below if you are watching this with me, and get your questions away, as Seb only does a 1:07. Not a good start from him, and certainly staring down the battle at elimination. It's crazy with the Aston Martins right now, or the Aston Martins, I should say. They really have been struggling in qualifying. Race pace, they certainly are a lot more competitive, but in qualifying, they really are struggling to find the pace. Max Verstappen at the moment coming into the pits. Looks like he feels relatively safe in third position at the moment. Only the two Ferraris ahead of him, and despite the track evolution that this circuit can have, I would say a 1.1 second gap to Zhou Guanyu, who currently is in P16 at the moment, should be sufficient enough to keep him going. It'd be a massive shock if Max Verstappen wasn't able to make it through to Q2 this afternoon. Anyway, bottom 5 right now: Zhou, Vettel, Latifi, Stroll, and Albon. Albon putting on those brand spanking new shiny soft tyres, and he will certainly be looking to improve after that lap time was invalidated for exceeding track limits at turn 9. So he'll be hoping that he can get another good lap under his belt before the end of the session, and he certainly has to deliver very, very soon. And just looking at the replay of Alex Albon, not really much to comment on that really. He's just simply gone wide, and that's all you can really say about it. Anyway, Lance Stroll, we haven't said much about him at the moment. A driver that's probably under a little bit of pressure in the team, arguably having the safest seat in the sport whilst his dad owns the team. Gets his car up into 15th place, but very much at risk, because we've got a few capable drivers behind him that will certainly be looking to improve at the moment. Only 5 cars currently in the pit lane, and that is the top 5 of Leclerc, Sainz, Verstappen. Hamilton has just gone out of the pit, so obviously he doesn't feel safe. Sergio Perez at the moment, P5, he's just got out at the moment, so it's just the 2 Ferraris and Verstappen that are in the pits, and I would say that they look fairly safe. I'm a bit surprised Sir Lewis has gone out, but I suppose better to be safe than sorry. I could be saying this, and in about a few minutes' time we might find out that time's not good enough to get him through, but I'm sure he'll be okay. And we've got Jack Mackindo TV. Hi, Jack. Hope you're well. Comments in asking me, hi, Adam, who's been the most improved driver from Silverstone qualifying today? Well, it's very, very early to say, but I'll tell you what, it's a very, very hard thing to say, really. I mean, there's so many out there right now, but looking at it, I would probably be looking in the direction. I'll tell you what, Jack, I'm going to have to get back to you at the end of qualifying, because there's so much that could change here right now. So if it's all the same to you, I might save that one to the very end of qualifying, if that's okay with you, because we've still got plenty of time to go. We've just got a minute left, or just under a minute, on board with Zhou Guanyu right now, who currently is out of qualifying. He will need to deliver if he can get through. At the moment, Stroll on the bubble with a 106.892. 30 seconds to go left in qualifying. And of course, just a reminder, guys, anyone that's on a lap right now can complete it. Of course, once the checker flag goes, you have to complete the lap that you are on for it to count. And Zhou right now is improving on this lap. He's a little bit faster than Stroll, but Stroll, of course, on a lap. The only 3 drivers not on a lap at this point are the 2 Ferraris and Max Verstappen. And also, we've got Sergio Perez on an out lap, but he looks like he's about to start his final flying run. Zhou across the line does not improve. So Zhou Guanyu looks like he's out of qualifying unless he can complete the lap that he's on and improve. Yuki Tsunoda currently on the bubble right now as Bottas improved to go P11. Tsunoda up into 12th position, relegates his teammate Gasly down. Gasly does not improve. Gasly under pressure now. Will he be out of qualifying? Latifi improves, but he only goes P19 right now. Daniel Ricciardo currently out of qualifying. Needs to make sure that this counts. He keeps it within the white lines, but can he be fast enough? No is the answer. Daniel Ricciardo once again struggles to make it through in qualifying after an upturn in form. Very, very disappointing. Stroll does not improve either. He's also out of qualifying in P17. Vettel goes up to P17. So once again, both Aston Martins out of qualifying. Zhou's the only one that could possibly improve. He's on a lap, but I don't think he's going to be able to. So I think that will be the end of qualifying, guys. Just waiting for the final order to be confirmed. Images from the Aston Martin garage looking disappointed once again they have failed to get out of the bottom 5. And Daniel Ricciardo just missing out. Got it, well, middle sector was good from Ricciardo, but he made too many mistakes in the final part of the lap. So very, very disappointing for Daniel Ricciardo once again. And yeah, it's a very, very strange one right now for Danny Rick. I mean, he looked like he was improving. McLaren certainly seemed a bit happier. Obviously, some team radio from him. Not quite sure what is going on with him right now. And obviously, his own career, his own future at the team is in his own hands right now. But certainly is a worrying sign for him. Looking at the order right now and remembering the qualifying pecking order at Silverstone, I'm actually going to answer this now, Jack. I would say it's probably going to be one of the Haas's. Both of them failed to get through to Q2 in Silverstone. So by process of elimination and given who else is already in there, I would say it's definitely going to be one of the Haas's that are the most improved from Silverstone qualifying right now. And as you can see, Magnussen and Mick Schumacher separated by 400 of a second. And I suppose if you're Haas, that is exactly what you would want from Mick Schumacher. You would want him to be at least that close to his teammate. So, yeah, great stuff from them. I'm going to say probably Mick Schumacher. And he was what, half a second off his teammate in Silverstone? So, yeah, I'll say the Haas is definitely the most improved from Silverstone qualifying so far today. And Mick Schumacher in particular. Shiro in the comments. Hi, Shiro. Hope you're well. And saying, I struggle to understand how Daniel Ricciardo's form could have degraded so much in such a short time. Well, it is a real mystery, Shiro, I must admit. Daniel himself has openly admitted that there have been some certain technical aspects of these cars that he's struggled to adapt to, not necessarily putting the time to. But, you know, he has shown some form at some other circuits, so it is a real mystery. I mean, is his heart really in it as much as it was? Hard to say. Daniel was very much a happy-going guy. Obviously, he's aware of how fortunate he is to be in the position he is. Very, very talented driver. For whatever reason, he just cannot seem to find that magic something that he needs to sort of find his way back to the front again. On, and the very least, competing with his teammate on a regular basis. It does feel that Lando right now, who openly admitted to have a bit of a stranglehold and issues with the car, of course, but Danny Rick right now really needs to get it together. But just confirming the final order as IFST Simulator is requesting it. Of course, absolutely right to do so because I haven't done that. But the final order for qualifying, we've got the two Ferraris, Leclerc and Sainz, fastest in Q1, followed by Max Verstappen, Alonso 4th, Sir Lewis Hamilton 5th, Perez in 6th place, Russell 7th, Norris 8th, K-Mag and Mick Schumacher 9th and 10th for Haas. Then we have Bottas, Tsunoda, Ocon, Albon and Pierre Gasly going through to Q2. And we say goodbye to Daniel Ricciardo, Lance Stroll, Zhou Guanyu, Nicholas Latifi and Sebastian Vettel. We're about to start Q2 in a few minutes' time. 15 minutes of running. We will lose the 5 slowest, and then we will take the fastest 10 drivers into the pole position shootout. But that will be happening momentarily. Just as a quick reminder to you guys, whilst we have that little bit of a break to, if you're enjoying what we do, make sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Chasing 1,000 subscribers. Currently, we're on 718, which is fantastic for us. We absolutely love that. It's the channel has really started to kick off and grow in the last few months or so, and that's down mostly to your great support and confidence in us. And of course, you guys keep coming back for more great stuff, and we're really, really happy to do what we're doing for you. And of course, now for those of you that are new to the channel or you're familiar with the channel, for example, will know that we do our live race reviews on a Sunday night. So of course, we will be reviewing the Austrian Grand Prix and the sprint race all in one big cluster episode on Sunday night. And of course, if you want to know when that will be, just follow us on our social media platforms. We've got Insta, Twitter, and Facebook, DNF1_official, and we will let you know when that will be out. But it will be Sunday night after the race, the live Austrian Grand Prix episode for the DNF1 F1 podcast. And of course, we are live on all major podcasting platforms as well. You can check us out on there if you prefer an audio version, if you want to listen to that whilst you are traveling to work, or if you want to put it on in the background whilst you're busy doing stuff around the house. Whatever your poison is, you can listen to us, of course. And if you do listen to us on your favorite audio podcasting platform, make sure to leave us a nice 5-star review if you think we're worthy, because we'd really appreciate that from you guys. And we're about to get underway for Q2, and just waiting whilst we talk to Otmar, well, not us personally, Rob Crofty's talking to Otmar Zafner on the pit wall. Seems for the second week in a row, Sky resisting the temptation to talk to Christian Horner. Now, of course, whilst I don't have any allegiances to Red Bull whatsoever, it's nice to see Sky having someone else to talk to as well. I'm sure a lot of fans will agree. It's a good thing that Sky is starting to now vary the team principals rather than going back to Christian, who always seems to enjoy having something to say on the show as well. I want to see Toto on the pit wall a bit more if we can as well. I haven't seen much of him for a while, so it should be rather interesting. It's a shame they didn't have Mattia Binotto as well. I think that would have been quite fun to quiz him on what's been going on at Ferrari. Of course, a lot of stories have been coming out, a lot of rumours about the dissatisfaction from Charles Leclerc. Of course, the two of them having a meeting, or a dinner, if you like, at Monaco. Leclerc did not go back to Maranello. So it would have been quite interesting to see what they had to talk about. Hopefully, any damage has been repaired. Everyone's sort of hugged and kissed and made up, and they can get going again. Hopefully, for better results coming very, very soon. I'm sure many Ferrari fans will be hoping for that as well. Q2 has just started, as you can see on the clock, ticking down 15 minutes. And everyone will be running around now to try and get into the top 10 for the pole position shootout for tomorrow's sprint race. Of course, Friday afternoon, it's sprint weekend. Big opportunity to get some more points, of course. I think Ferrari will be hoping that they end up first and second for tomorrow's sprint. And of course, first and second for the main race. Ferrari have really had a tough time trying to consolidate a strong 1-2 position into a race result. Only one 1-2 finish for them this season. And that was at the very first race of the season in Bahrain, which seems such a long time ago. And yeah, so let us know your thoughts so far on qualifying, guys, in the comment section. Great to have you along on a Friday afternoon. I can appreciate that for some of you guys it's a bit more difficult to join us owing to other commitments that would be going on during the week. IFST Simulator, which channel are you watching on, and is it the commentator David Croft? So yes, I'm watching this on Sky F1. However, I'm not getting the audio from the commentary, and the reason for that is because if I did, it would come through on the broadcast to you guys, and F1 management would not be too happy with me, and I wouldn't want the stream to be copyrighted or struck against the channel. So one of those things for content creators you've got to watch out for, but at the moment my audio is pretty much blind in that regard, so obviously talking to you lovely lot is the only thing I can hear right now, but it doesn't matter. Watching it on the TV screen next to me and updating you guys, and of course if you're watching it along with me, then that's absolutely fantastic. And of course if you're not and you're relying based on what I'm feeding back to you, then absolutely fantastic to have you guys aboard, and hope you are enjoying the stream so far. First guy over the line, starting his flying lap. We're on board with the sole remaining McLaren of Lando Norris on the softer tyres, and hopefully for him he can have a much better weekend. He was a little bit disappointed after Silverstone. He felt that a slower pit stop really cost him a chance at P5. Ended up in 6th overall at his home circuit. A very popular young driver, which I'm pretty sure will go on to very big things in the sport in due course. Shiro in the comments wanted to see Guan Yu Zhou. Well, that might be a joke on how I pronounce it. I do apologise. But Lando's actually gone very wide at turn 4 there. Almost went off the road, I should say. So that's a shame for him. Doesn't look like he's compromised anyone else's laps, fortunately. So that's good to see. He managed to keep it out of the gravel. But yeah, Shiro's saying, wanted to see Guan Yu Zhou doing a little better. He was on a decent little roll before the crash. He was. He really was. And I have been very impressed with Zhou Guan Yu of late. And I really hope that he can continue that form and get back. Hopefully the crash didn't faze him too much. He seemed to be okay. I'd have been surprised if he wasn't a bit shaken up, because it was a very scary looking crash. But as I said, if he keeps doing what he's doing and gets some more results in the team, I'm sure they'll be happy to keep him on. Of course, a big driver for F1's future in terms of their marketability in China, of course, no doubt. And Verstappen and Leclerc done their first laps in. Verstappen at 105.5, Leclerc 105.7. So Leclerc a little bit down on one he managed in Q1. Verstappen up in the pace, so Red Bull back in the hunt once again. Perez in P4. George Russell doing a 105.7, going up to P2. So Mercedes have a little bit of pace in hand. Hamilton goes fastest of all, 105.5. But yeah, good to see. Mercedes looking like they're there or thereabouts. I'd be surprised if they were fighting for pole today, but you never know. Things go wrong, someone messes up on their lap. One of them two, or maybe both of them, nail it, as it looks like they might have done there. Track ramping up, being over the line at the right time. You'd never, ever know. You certainly cannot rule Mercedes, and you certainly can't rule Sir Lewis Hamilton out at all. And Shira saying, no, it's a joke on how everyone pronounces it. Well, yeah, that's right. And of course, the correct pronunciation of it should be Zhou Guan Yu, from what we've been told. That's the correct way to sort of pronounce his name. Fair enough. But I digress on that one. And Shira also saying, after Monaco, there was Zhou memes, and that was his name because of the announcer. Yeah, it's probably Crofty or whoever the announcer. It might have been the announcer at Monaco. I know some circuit announcers, they certainly have a different way of pronouncing certain driver names. I remember an example when I went to a race back in Belgium, 2001, first race I went to. It was my 10th birthday at the time, so it shows you how old I am. But the announcer on the tannoy, not the announcer on the broadcast, was pronouncing it Michael Schumacher. So that was a very rememberable one. Probably a bad impression of that one. But I digress. You know, some announcers do that. IFST Simulator. Mercedes are definitely up there with Red Bull and Ferrari. They're certainly in the fight. And it's looking encouraging for them. I certainly hope that their pace in the race also matches that. But as I said, I'm expecting Mercedes just to be about a 10th or 2 on this circuit off the ultimate pace of Ferrari and Red Bull. But they're certainly there. If things go wrong, as we saw in some regards this season, and of course at Silverstone, you can't rule them out. You certainly can't rule them out. So hopefully for their sake, they will continue to improve. And who knows, we may end up with a 3-team fight towards the end of the season, but it's certainly shaping up. Back to the quali, just under 10 minutes to go now. Sir Lewis Hamilton still fastest of all. Verstappen P2, Russell P3, the 2 Ferraris 4th and 5th. Ocon moves up to 6th now, ahead of Sergio Perez. Just watching a replay. Lando Norris currently sitting in P10, and he goes very wide. Goes very, well, bit late on the brakes there into turn 1, so that'll be another lap gone. And Lando's really having a hard time trying to put it together at the moment. Doing the best job he can, but needs to find a way to hook it up when he's pushing. Albon in P8, Gasly P9, Norris P10. So Lewis Hamilton goes purple in the first sector. So Mercedes definitely seem like they've got some pace, particularly in the opening part of the lap. Very slippery car in the straight line. So, yeah, Mercedes looking very good. How that will transpire in the race, it certainly will prove to be quite positive for them in terms of an overtaking perspective, as Hamilton improves again, 105.4, just under a 10th off the fastest time that we saw from Charles Leclerc in Q1. But it's certainly encouraging signs as this track starts to evolve a little bit more. And we'll wait and see what the rivals do as we get towards the end of the session. But certainly encouraging stuff for Mercedes. I think they'll be very, very happy if they were on pole and in P3 by the end of qualifying today. But yeah, Shiro saying Hamilton definitely seems determined to get a win. I mean, I'm sure he is. This, as I said already on the stream, this is the longest run that Sir Lewis has gone without actually winning a Grand Prix in his career. Imagine that. A 15-year career, over 100 Grand Prix wins, 7 world titles, depending on who you ask, and over 100 pole positions, and yet this is the longest he's gone without actually winning a race in his career. It's astounding stuff, astounding statistics to one of the greatest drivers of all time, in some people's minds, the greatest of them all. Kevin Magnussen now, P6. 7 tenths off Hamilton's time. The Haas is still rolling about rather well. We're on board with Mick Schumacher now, hoping to get a good lap time in. What can he do? Goes up to P6. He just about beats his teammate. 0.02 of a second faster than Magnussen. As you can see, Gunther Steiner with his arms crossed. I'm sure he'd be very delighted with the pace that Mick Schumacher is now starting to show. At least he's on par with his teammate, a very accomplished and talented driver in his own right. So great stuff to see from Mick Schumacher. Sergio Perez does a 106.2. So Perez not really improving much. Only P8 for him. So he may be at risk here. Alex Albon currently in P10. Now P11. Bottas does a 106.3. So it's getting very tight now with just under 7 minutes to go before the end of qualifying. We're on board with Fernando Alonso, El Plan himself. Currently P14 without a time. He at the moment is just under 2 tenths faster than Bottas through the opening 2 sectors now. Final 2 corners, a fast sweep in turn 9, hoping to keep within the limits, which he does so with ease. Same again at turn 10, again keeping it within the white lines. That's the important thing. Over the line, P6 for Alonso, and only a few tenths off Sir Lewis Hamilton at the front. Alonso going rather well for Alpine. Sonoda really under pressure, really wobbling there through 7 and 8. The AlphaTauri does not look hooked up in that middle sector. Gasly just behind him trying to get through. The AlphaTauris could really do with a good showing qualifying after the misery that they suffered in Silverstone. owing to their own errors, of course, it must be said, particularly Yuki Tsunoda's only 13th and 14th for the two of them. Gasly just ahead of his teammates. So right now, AlphaTauri really under a bit of pressure in their sister team's backyard at the moment. Coming up to the 5-minute mark right now, just a recap of the order. Hamilton, Verstappen, Russell, Leclerc, Sainz in the top 5. Then Alonso, Mick Schumacher, Kevin Magnussen, Esteban Ocon, and Valtteri Bottas complete the top 10. Sergio Perez in the Red Bull right now in P11. He looks like he's going to get one more chance to try and get himself into Q3. It'll be a real shock for Perez and for Red Bull if he fails to qualify in the top 10. He had a lap time deleted for track limits at turn 9. So I believe that lap time could be even worse. He could be even further down the order. So a lot of pressure on Checo right now, who got his first pole position of his career in Jeddah. And of course, winning the Monaco Grand Prix earlier in the season. And of course, rewarded with a longer term deal in the team. So very much established figure in that team now, Checo Perez. Changing crash helmets as well. So obviously having a bit issue with the visibility. Perhaps it's a little bit darker than he anticipated. Or a little bit brighter than he anticipated. I'm not sure. You have to make your own minds up on that one. Just seeing the grandstands, that incredible figure of the ball at the Red Bull Ring, of course. Very much Red Bull territory, this circuit. The Orange Army in their droves. Very hard to pick out a fan in the grandstands right now that isn't a Max Verstappen or Red Bull fan. But I think you can see a few fluorescent yellow Mercedes caps there. The Lewis Hamilton fan base still there, travelling around the world. I'm sure you can see a few Ferrari fans in there as well. They're everywhere, like locusts sometimes. Everywhere you go, you see a Ferrari fan. So great stuff to see. Great support. This has always been a track where the Max Verstappen and the Orange Army have very much dominated the fan base here this weekend. So very much a contrast to what we saw at Silverstone, where it was very much Sir Lewis Hamilton supporters filling up the grandstands in their majority. So it might be interesting to see what the atmosphere will be like come Sunday. And of course, the sprint race on Saturday as well. I'm sure they'll be delighted if Max Verstappen can get pole position this afternoon. But just under 4 minutes to go. Still have Sir Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, George Russell currently in the pit lane. The two Ferraris back out on the track. And this is a quiet period at the moment on track. Only four drivers on the track at the moment. The two Ferraris, Ocon and Lando Norris right now, the man that we are watching at the moment. Currently P15, didn't set a good first lap. He had a few mistakes at turn 4, which ruined his lap. He will need to try and deliver. That car still looks a handful as he goes through turn 6 on the gravel a little bit, just about keeps it on the road. Charles Leclerc goes fastest, 105.2 to improve the fastest lap of the weekend so far from Leclerc. So Ferrari now showing their hand a little bit. So Lewis Hamilton coming out of the garage. Carlos Sainz goes P4, 105.5, just 3 tenths actually behind his teammate. Norris only P13. So Norris really in trouble here. May not be able to get through to the top 10. We've got Esteban Ocon coming through the final few corners now. Did he keep it on the track? Comes across the line, goes P6. The track is starting to evolve a little bit. However, the evolution is not as steep as we expected it to be. It's only a few tenths here or there, but certainly enough to prompt almost everybody to come back out on the circuit. In fact, everyone is now back out on track. The two Ferraris, the only drivers, and Ocon, of course, have just set a lap time. They may not go again. The two Ferraris may feel, probably will, given how far they are ahead of Valtteri Bottas in P10 at the moment. They should be safe. Bottom 5 recap. Sergio Perez, Alex Albon, the two AlphaTauris, and Lando Norris, who's had his lap time deleted again for track limits exceeded at turn 7. Meaning that Lando right now is dead last. P15, 20.5 seconds off the pace, although that was a very scruffy lap, that first one. So if Lando's got any tyre life left and any fuel left in it, he's going to have to use it now, or he could be out of qualifying in P15 to solidify a very disappointing qualifying for McLaren. It's a very strange one with McLaren as well. They are either on it or they are nowhere near. And you can certainly tell that McLaren are struggling when Lando Norris is struggling to put it together right now. It seems to be a car that very much seems to be brilliant on one day and not so great on a completely different day. It's crazy stuff. Hopefully they can sort it out and get back to where they feel they need to be right now. And Shiro saying Norris cutting those corners. And yeah, I mean, this is what it is, isn't it? I mean, track limits are there. They're being policed rather well by the looks of it. Very strict. So, of course, everyone having to behave. We're on board with Alex Albon now. P12 at the moment in the upgraded Williams. Of course, both cars have the upgrades from what I understand now this weekend. It was just Albon last weekend. Albon, of course, had a bad crash at Silverstone. Although I tell you what, that might not count for Albon. He comes across the line, P10, but I'll be honest with you, I think that's very sketchy. I'm very surprised if he'll be able to keep that one. It looked like he breached track limits, not only at turn 9, but at turn 10 as well, Alex Albon, really pushing it. So I think that might be deleted. We'll have to wait and see. Kevin Magnussen now up into P6 in the 1 minute 5. So Magnussen improves 6 tenths off Leclerc. Looks like he might be through. We're on board with Sergio Perez now, and this is really big pressure time from Perez. Has to keep it clean, has to keep it within the white lines. And I tell you what, he's really pushing it. Will he get through? Currently, few tenths faster than Gasly, who does improve to go 10th. So Perez really under pressure now. We're out of time on the clock. Everyone currently on a lap must complete their laps if they want to improve. Now Perez coming through the final corner. Looked like he kept it clean there. Verstappen goes P2 just behind Leclerc. Perez goes into P6 right now. So that might be enough for Sergio Perez. He may have just recovered that. Max Verstappen also did a lap. Did a 1:05.3. So he's second behind Leclerc. So Lewis Hamilton only under 2 tenths off the leading guy. So he's there or thereabouts. Alonso coming across the line. Does not improve. Stays P9. Very, very sketchy out of the final corner. Really on the bubble. Mick Schumacher on the bubble right now. We have Bottas, Tsunoda and Norris definitely out of qualifying. And waiting for Gasly and Albon. I think we might be at the end of qualifying. Albon pitted. Gasly. Just waiting to see Pierre Gasly before we confirm the end of qualifying right now. Looks like we might be done for qualifying. Mick Schumacher pits. He's in P10. He's finished. Just waiting now to see the final confirmation, guys. Just bear with me just a moment. It looks like we're done for qualifying, actually. So, unless Pierre Gasly pulls out something in the next few seconds, we're just going to wait before I confirm that. But right now, Albon, Bottas, Tsunoda and Norris are out of qualifying. Disappointing. Gasly does not complete the time. Was not on another lap anyway. So that is the end of qualifying for Q2. And it's a very interesting scene. Charles Leclerc, once again, leading at the end of qualifying session. So despite the fact that some of us, myself included, predicted that Max Verstappen would be on pole position, and it still is very tight right now, but it's Charles Leclerc looking to have the speed in qualifying, as he has often done this season. Qualifying on the front row for every race except for Canada and Silverstone this season. So 8 out of 10 so far is not bad at all, and been on pole position for 7 of those races, despite the fact he's only won 2 this season. Looking good again. May get on pole position for the sprint tomorrow. And of course, just running through the order, we have Charles Leclerc fastest, Max Verstappen P2, Sir Lewis Hamilton P3, and certainly in the fight by the looks of it, Carlos Sainz P4, George Russell P5 for Mercedes. As often with George Russell, loves being in the top 5. Sergio Perez P6, needs to do a bit more for Red Bull in Q3, but of course that's when it counts, so it could all be for nothing Q1 and Q2 right now. Kevin Magnussen, the first of both Hasses into Q3. Great stuff from them after a dismal qualifying from Haas in Silverstone. Both drivers in the top 10 in Q3. So Jack McIndoe asking me who's the most improved. Looks like the 2 Hasses very much the leading contenders for the most improved from last weekend. Ocon 8th, Alonso 9th for Alpine, Mick Schumacher in 10th as already mentioned, and the 5 drivers going out will be Gasly, Albon, Bottas, Tsunoda and Lando Norris, which will be very depressing for McLaren after Ricciardo's misfortunes, because those 2 will be starting alongside each other on the 8th row of the grid. Certainly not what McLaren would have wanted. But guys, of course, before we get started for the final qualifying session of the afternoon, which will determine pole position, a 12-minute session for the sprint race tomorrow. You know what to do if you're enjoying this. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hello to those of you, the new joiners of this stream. Hope you are having a good time this Friday afternoon. Hopefully you've not had too much of a stressful week, and hopefully you can now enjoy the weekend with some Formula 1 action as we're about to get underway for Q3. And thank you so much for choosing to spend it with us. on the DNF1 channel. Of course, myself flying solo this afternoon, and of course me constantly talking, which I'm sure some people won't mind and other people probably not so much, but there we go. That's you can't always get what you want in life, I suppose. But anyway, I digress. And let me know your predictions, guys. Who is going to be on pole position for the sprint tomorrow? Right now, it seemed like Max Verstappen had the pace going into qualifying. Still very much there or thereabouts, but is Charles Leclerc right now showing that he is the fastest so far, at least for the time being? Can he consolidate that to get another pole position this season? It almost feels like Charles Leclerc is a certainty to be on the front row. Will he be fastest? We'll have to wait and see. And so get your predictions in the comments. I want to see what your mind is saying. Where is everyone's thoughts going for Q3? Who's going to put it on pole position this afternoon? The fans in the grandstands, a lot of orange Max Verstappen shirts, and I'm sure they will be hoping for their man to get it on pole position. Max Verstappen not been on pole much this season. I'm just coming to memory. Trying to think where he's actually been. Has Max Verstappen been on pole position this season? I have to have a look. To be honest, I can't think if he's been on pole or not. Quite an interesting one. Let me know if you know in the comments. I'm sure Max has been on pole once or twice this season. Well, I digress. We'll have to come out of that and have a look. Whilst I do that, let me know, guys, if you already know if Max has been on pole so far this season. I'm sure he has. It just feels like so long ago. But, yeah, there you go. So, yes, it was in Bahrain. Of course, Leclerc was on pole in Bahrain. It's a crazy one. Really is crazy. This is, I know Perez has been on pole. I'm sure Max has been on pole. Just looking through. It wasn't pole Saudi Arabia. That was Perez, wasn't it? It was Imola. Yes, Max was on pole in Imola. I remember now. So, yeah, it's amazing what happens when you're sort of trying to think on the spot. Your mind just goes. Anyway, enough of that aside. Shiro in the comments saying at the start predicted Verstappen, but I'm thinking Leclerc takes another pole position. Do you know what? I'm with you on this one, Shiro. People that follow this podcast will know, or follow the channel will know that I'm a Ferrari fan. I would love to see Leclerc on pole. I'd love to see Leclerc get the win this weekend, but you just never know, really. It always feels like qualifying this season that Charles Leclerc has had a few attempts in hand to really pull out when it matters most, and I think that's been one of the best attributes of his performance this season. The fact that he's been able to pull it out of the bag when he's needed to most. And this was a guy a few years ago when Sebastian Vettel was his teammate, where people often talked about Charles Leclerc as not being a very good qualifier. And he's certainly been able to up his game in that regard and deliver when it matters most. So certainly looks like the favourite at the moment. You certainly can't rule out Max. You can't rule out Sir Lewis Hamilton either. Looks like he's really in there. On a track like Austria, Toto Wolff says that this kind of circuit, you kind of double the deficit in other circuits to this one. So where he's 2 tenths off the pace at this one, it could be 4 tenths, maybe half a second at other circuits. But he's certainly in the fight. You certainly can't rule Sir Lewis out. I remember that magical pole position lap he put together a few years ago in Austria in the difficult weather conditions, over a second faster than everyone else. So he certainly can pull it out of the bag when he has to. IFST Simulator, I think Red Bull and Ferrari may be in trouble at France after the rules change. Yeah, so quick update on that one, just in case those of you weren't following. Of course, there was a World Motorsports Commission meeting with the F1 teams, and one of the parts of that was this debate over a potential technical directive change on the porpoising issue, although that's very loosely called porpoising, because when I read it, it certainly is not addressing the porpoising issue. If anything, it's making it worse. That said, that's another debate for another day. But that will now not come into effect until the Belgian Grand Prix later in the season. And Ferrari and Red Bull themselves didn't seem concerned by this issue. If it was to come true, if it was to happen in France, they felt they'd be fine anyway. But yeah, so that's not going to come into effect until at least the Belgian Grand Prix. So it's going to be a little while before that technical directive comes in, and it's a bit strange as to what's going on there. As I said, I can't really tell you how it all works, ins and outs and everything else. From what I read, I just thought, if this is an issue to address porpoising, surely you wouldn't be encouraging changing the technical directive in that regard. Because a team like Red Bull, if they are one of the teams that are having an unrigid floor and the FIA deem it to be against the regulations, it's one of the best cars at dealing with porpoising. The Ferrari is a different beast altogether. I couldn't explain to you what's going on there, assuming that they're one of the teams that are doing it as well. So it's a very strange one. Very strange one indeed. Turn 8 incident involving car 11. Sergio Perez noted regarding track limits, and I thought he'd was quite close on track limits on that lap anyway, but they've noted it, so might have been a complaint from someone. But it looks like the stewards obviously did not deem that to be an issue. Otherwise, his lap would have been deleted and he wouldn't have took part in Q3. Anyway, about to get underway. Just 12 minutes of running. Just waiting for the green light to get going. Who's going to be on pole position, guys? Is it going to be this man here, Charles Leclerc, that I'm watching, coming out of the garage now? Is he going to be on pole? Is it going to be Max Verstappen, the championship leader, the reigning defending world champion? Is he going to be on pole position? And we'll have to wait and see. Actually, the session has started actually quite a bit ago, actually. The clock didn't really come on the Sky broadcast till now. So we have 10 minutes and 20 seconds to go, guys, just to catch you up. So we missed the first minute. Not that there was any action on the track. But here we go. Just over 10 minutes to go. Looking at a replay here of Sergio Perez at turn 8. Did he go off the circuit? I'll tell you what. Sergio Perez, I think he's breached track limits here. I think he's cut the corner a little bit on the curb. He's got all 4 wheels. Yeah, he's got all 4 wheels off. Well. That is a bit controversial, guys. Very controversial. Sergio Perez had all 4 wheels off at turn 8, meaning his lap time should have been deleted, and he shouldn't, in theory, be in Q3. So very controversial, I believe, from Sergio Perez there. And I'm not sure what the stewards will make of that one. I don't know if that's an area where they police track limits. I think it is, because I think someone else was done. I know someone was done at turn 7. So we'll have to wait and see what happens on that one. Very strange. We'll have to have a look on social media to see what people are saying about that one, because that is very suspect. But so Shira's saying, it seems that they're trying to combat porpoising. Red Bull wouldn't have much to change, but the FIA does weird things. Yeah, no, I totally understand what you mean. And I do think porpoising is at the centre of it. From what I've read and for what I've been told and understand, that if they wanted the teams to follow the rules as they're intended rather than as they're written, and that's another thing altogether, because it's, they're not exactly doing anything illegal technically the way the rules are written, although take that for what it's worth. If we're basing it on that, for Red Bull in particular, if they're the team that's doing it the most, for example, they're one of the best teams at dealing with porpoising. And if this is an innovation that's used to control porpoising, outlawing it kind of goes against the idea of what porpoising is about and what is causing it. It might be a better idea to tell the other teams, look, they can do this. This is fine. Here's how they did it. Apply it to your own cars. But for some reason, it seems more likely that the FA are going to get rid of it. As I said, look, this is my opinion, and I don't pretend to understand it as well as some people do. So perhaps I'm wrong in terms of how I understood it. But it just seems a bit strange that this is something that's being touted as something to do with porpoising, when in fact they're actually doing the opposite. It feels more to me that they know Ferrari and Red Bull are doing it, and they're obviously disappointed in the fact that those two have stolen a march on everyone, so they want to bring the pack closer together. They didn't want any teams finding loopholes in the regulations, and it looks like Ferrari and Red Bull had done, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, back to the qualifying. 8 minutes to go. Charles Leclerc goes fastest of all, 105.183, the fastest lap so far this weekend. So he lays down his first marker. Carlos Sainz now on a lap. So is Max Verstappen just behind him. Max went purple in Sector 1. Leclerc purple in Sector 2 and Sector 3. Sainz coming across the line now. Can he get anywhere near his teammate? Does a 105.3 exactly. Verstappen over the line. Does he go fastest? He does go fastest. 105.0. Perez 105.4. And this could be very controversial with Sergio Perez wherever he ends up, because as I said, if he breaches track limits and ends up, quite high up, which I'm expecting him to, because he's put together his best lap of the weekend, it could be very interesting indeed. We'll have to wait and see. But, yeah, very strange. Just seeing a lot of people on social media actually reacting to this. They're not happy about the fact that Perez clearly breached track limits and is allowed into Q3. So a lot of controversy there for Sergio Perez and Red Bull. Make of that what you will. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments if you did see that. Shira saying, I doubt AlphaTauri makes that call to the stewards with a Red Bull driver, the one that's ahead. So obviously, yes, that would have been what Gasly's radio was about if he's the one that's breached track limits. But of course, as I said, it's very strange. Very, very strange. I mean, we've talked often about lack of consistency with the stewarding. And I think this season we were hoping we were going to get more consistent stewarding or clarification on driving standards, for example, and it doesn't seem like we have, which is a shame. But anyway, we have to move on. We'll have to wait and see what happens afterwards, what happens with Sergio Perez with the stewards after qualifying. George Russell now currently P5, behind the 2 Red Bulls and the 2 Ferraris after his first run. Ocon 6th, Magnussen 7th. Sir Lewis Hamilton in P8. Didn't really have a good run. Probably a bit of a warm-up lap where he made a mistake somewhere. Alonso P9, Mick Schumacher P10. Neither sitting a lap time yet. Russell's on a second lap, but he's about 4 tenths down on Verstappen. So this one doesn't look like he's going to improve. Interesting to see if he can get to... And Hamilton's gone off, actually. Hamilton's crashed. So Lewis Hamilton has crashed off the exit of turn 8. That's going to be a red flag. I was just watching a little corner there on the box when Russell was doing his lap to see Hamilton. Russell did improve, but not much. But Sir Lewis Hamilton has crashed into the wall at turn 8. He just lost control of his car as he turned left at turn 7. And the car just understeered, went off the road, and he was practically a passenger. Sir Lewis Hamilton out of qualifying and will start P10. And I can't hear, but I can see an eruption of roars and cheers from the Orange Army, the Max Verstappen grandstand. And I don't like to see it, but it's the sort of thing that you kind of expect to see now with the Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen rivalry, depending on what circuit you go to. But yeah, it looks like it wasn't the worst. It wasn't the worst looking crash in the world. For those of you that didn't see it, it was a crash nonetheless. And obviously, it looks like Lewis is going to be okay. We'll just wait for him to confirm. On team radio, see there Lewis sort of sitting in his car at the moment. Hopefully he's okay. If you guys can hear the audio, do let me know if Lewis has confirmed he's okay, because I haven't seen it there. Obviously, I haven't heard it. Saw team radio, so I'm sure they addressed that one. But what a shock. So Lewis Hamilton looking mega, mega quick. Probably the closest he's probably gotten to being in a chance of getting a pole position this season. And he's absolutely binned it off the exit of turn 7. And huge shock there. Everyone's sort of looking on now. We've got a red flag. 5.5 minutes left of qualifying. I will reset the clock because I just realised it's still going. But we have 5 minutes and 29 seconds left on the clock. And what a shock. So Lewis Hamilton now getting out of the car. Looks to be fine. I mean, it wasn't the worst looking crash in the world. It was a fairly slow one, but it was one of those where once Hamilton lost control a little bit, the car was understeering onto the gravel. You're practically a passenger at this point, and that'll be really disappointing for him this weekend. A weekend where he's been looking very, very good, and you can see the disappointment in his face, looking really annoyed at himself over that. It'll be interesting to see what caused that, whether it was driver error or whether the car just lost grip going into the corner. He was really pushing, but he'll be very, very disappointed in that one as well, considering that this is an opportunity for him to try and get some big points for the Mercedes team and get himself in contention to try and win a Grand Prix. Trying to get the words out now. But yeah, just watching a replay now. Hamilton coming through turn 6. Everything looks fine at this point. Had a bit of a swerve there. Goes into turn 7 and yeah, just loses control. The back end steps out on him. Tries to correct it, but he's got nowhere to go once he's tried to correct it. Off into the gravel and straight into the wall. As I said, it wasn't a violent crash. He hit the wall at the side of his car. So in terms of impact, probably not too bad. But Sir Lewis Hamilton out of qualifying. Looked like he might have carried a bit too much speed into turn 7. The back end steps out on him. And at that point, when he tries to correct it, he's already on the gravel and into the wall. So what a shock indeed. And Sir Lewis, again, be very, very disappointed with this one. It's very rare you see a mistake like that from Sir Lewis Hamilton. But it just shows the times right now, really pushing as hard as he can. Looked like he might have got a really good qualifying result today. Unfortunately, he's going to come away with nothing, and he's going to be starting P10. Although, we should stress, we've got to wait and see what the stewards decide about Sergio Perez. So he may be P9. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But he looks okay, Sir Lewis. Absolutely fine, of course. Getting the medical car back to the pit lane. As I said, it wasn't the most violent crash in the world. They may take him to get a bit of a checkup, but he's absolutely fine. So Lewis, if you're not watching this and you're a bit worried, he's absolutely fine. Don't worry. But Toto Wolff looking very disappointed in the garage and faces it all. A weekend has said it already. Mercedes looked like they were quick. May not be as quick as Red Bull and Ferrari, but certainly was an opportunity for them to sort of make some inroads. But unfortunately for Sir Lewis, he's going to have some work to do from P10 at least in tomorrow's sprint. Fortunately for Sir Lewis, we should say that because it's a sprint race, he will have time to make up some places in that race. So he may end up starting in a more favourable position in the race in the race on Sunday, of course. But right now, looking rather grim. Very disappointed for Sir Lewis Hamilton, and but fortunately he's okay. And will be interesting to see what he can do tomorrow. But very, very close in that field right now. As you can see, the top 4 separated by 3/10 of a second. Top 5, if you can count Russell as well, 3/10 of a second. But Verstappen pole at the moment. Leclerc less than a tenth behind him. Sainz in P3. Perez P4, although controversially, we'll have to wait and see what happens with Perez. Russell P5. Session resuming at 18:05 local time. That's just over 5 minutes from now, whilst they repair the Tech Pro barrier, I should say, not Techno, it's not Rave. The Tech Pro barrier over at turn 7. And seeing a replay of one of the Ferraris, Charles Leclerc on team radio there. Not quite sure what he was saying, but he might have been on a lap to try and improve before the red flag came out. Can't see what he was saying there, but yeah, it looked like one of those where he was either complaining about George Russell or the red flag has come out at the wrong time for him. Looks like it might be the latter. So, but right now, currently P2 Charles Leclerc. Looks like he might have a bit more time in his pocket, but Max Verstappen has certainly pulled out the goods when he's needed to, something that Max has not done very often in qualifying. So the pressure's on to see if Charles Leclerc can respond, and you kind of feel that he's going to have to if he's going to get some big points on his rival this weekend. And yep, seeing a few Lewis Hamilton fans in the stands not happy about what's happened there. Surrounded by the Orange Army, the Max Verstappen fans seeing the remnants of that Mercedes car. And you can see, certainly not a write-off, but plenty of work to do for the mechanics tonight to get that car ready for the sprint tomorrow. IFSC Simulator, I'm outside right now. An F1 app not working, so I'm here today. Thank you for streaming. You're very welcome, and really glad to have you along. Hopefully you decide to stay along and join us for many more streams in the future. And of course, if you haven't subscribed, my friend, why not do it? It's absolutely free, doesn't cost you 1 penny, and there's plenty of room in the DNF1 family for all of you lovely lot that decide to tune in to our shows at your convenience. I'm really grateful for your ongoing support to everyone, so glad that we can entertain at least. And yeah, it was a bit nasty just looking at the more replays of Hamilton's crash, really. It's just simply going into turn 7, opening up the corner, the back end steps out halfway through the corner. At this point, not even someone as gifted and talented as Sir Lewis Hamilton is able to correct that and keep it on the road. But we'll have to wait and see. Shira saying it feels impossible for Leclerc to catch Verstappen without some serious luck, especially considering Ferrari seems to be doing all they can to keep him from gaining points on Verstappen. And it's a very interesting take, but certainly not a wrong one. It almost feels, while Ferrari may feel they're doing the best that they can, you could argue very strongly that Leclerc could still be winning this World Championship if reliability was more favourable to him than against him this season, as we've seen, and the strategy errors were kept to a minimum. It really felt at the start of the season that Ferrari had got their act together, and all of a sudden it's capitulated in front of them. But there's plenty of time for things to improve, plenty of time for things to go right. They definitely look quick. Leclerc certainly looks quick and very, very handy at the moment. So we'll have to wait and see what happens on that one. And IFST Simulator, thank you very much for subscribing to the channel. Really appreciate that, and glad to have you aboard along with everyone else that's decided to join the DNF1 family. So really grateful for your support on this one. And yeah, there we go. There we go indeed. But 2 minutes to go before the restart of Q3. If you've just joined us, got 5.5 minutes left to go in qualifying. Red flag was caused by Sir Lewis Hamilton going off at turn 7 after losing control of the back end of his car. And he's out of qualifying. He's going to be starting P10, might be P9, of course. Sergio Perez controversially went through in Q2, despite the fact that the time that got him through was done by cutting the corner at turn 8, which the stewards did not pick up as it happened. But we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, let us know your predictions if you haven't already predicted who you think is going to be on pole position right now. As it stands, it's Max Verstappen on pole position at the moment for tomorrow's sprint race.
followed by Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. And then we have Sergio Perez, George Russell, Esteban Ocon, Kevin Magnussen, Sir Lewis Hamilton currently in P8, although he didn't set a representative lap time. And then Alonso and Mick Schumacher in 9th and 10th, waiting to set a time, and will no doubt, unless they make an error, qualify ahead of Sir Lewis Hamilton for tomorrow's sprint race. As I said, because it's a sprint race, plenty of opportunity for Sir Lewis Hamilton to make up some places, as he famously did at the Brazilian Grand Prix last season. And I'm sure for some Sir Lewis Hamilton fans out there, if you want some cheering up after this qualifying session is done, I'd recommend watching that back. That was a pretty special drive from a pretty special young man indeed. 30 seconds to go before we restart, I should say, the Austrian Grand Prix sprint qualifying session in Q3. And yeah, get your predictions in, guys. Some of you still hanging on all this time. We really appreciate you guys hanging around whilst these red flags go. And I know it can be quite tempted to sort of drop out of the streams when these things happen. But really appreciate you guys hanging around with me. And of course, me flying solo this afternoon, not having someone to talk to. But it's lovely to watch Formula One with you guys as well. So great stuff. And of course, tomorrow we'll have the sprint qualify. We won't be streaming that. We normally stream qualifying rather than the sprint races. We will be, however, streaming our podcast review episodes that we do after the race on a Sunday night. So should be rather interesting indeed. And N3TR Sprint decides where they finish. Well, yeah, of course, the sprint qualifying decides the sprint race order, and then of course the sprint race order then decides what happens for the race on Sunday. Qualifying has just gotten back underway. George Russell, first man out of the garage. 4 minutes, 45 seconds left on the clock, as you can see in the bottom part of your screen. And but don't forget, guys, of course, as a quick reminder, this determines the sprint race order, not the race starting order. That will be determined by the sprint race tomorrow. And whoever goes fastest in this sprint qualifying session will be credited with pole position, rather than how it used to be with the Speed King Award. And oh, sorry, I do apologise, M3TR. You were answering a question for Shiro, saying, does pole count for the main race, or does the sprint determine the order for the Grand Prix? So, yeah, the sprint race determines the Grand Prix starting order for the race on Sunday. Sprint qualifying we're watching now, that determines the order for the sprint race tomorrow afternoon. One driver that will be starting at the back of the grid on Sunday is Valtteri Bottas. Had to take a new power unit outside the new regulations, which of course means that he will start at the back of the grid on Sunday rather than the sprint race tomorrow. So Valtteri Bottas for the sprint race at least, even though he didn't get through to Q3, he will be starting down, all the way down in 13th place. Unlucky for some, might be an opportunity for Valtteri to try and pick up some points in the sprint race before he has to do it all again on a Sunday afternoon from further back. Back to qualifying, George Russell now. His teammate out of qualifying for the time being in P8 at the moment. Probably will most likely be P10, could be P9, depending on what happens with Perez. Of course, we'll have to keep an eye on the socials to find out what happens with Sergio Perez later on, if he'll be allowed to keep his qualifying position. George Russell did not improve in the first sector, so he's going to have to try and find some time in the final two parts of the lap. Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz leaving the garage now. The Red Bulls lying in wait, waiting for their opportunity. Russell improves in the middle sector, but he's still 4 tenths off of Verstappen right now, as he was in his first run. He was much quicker in the final part of the lap. He seems to be holding on to the tyres until then. But right now, looks like 5th place may be the best that George Russell... As George Russell goes off, George has lost it at the final corner, and he has crashed. Wow. Both Mercedes drivers have crashed. George Russell crashes at the final corner. And that's brought out another red flag with 2.5 minutes left on the clock. George Russell completely going for broke at the final corner, and he's had a crash, and that could be more problems for Mercedes. They cannot believe it. Hamilton causing one red flag. George Russell, literally minutes later, causing another one with a crash at turn 10. Unbelievable. I said George Russell's best chance might be P5. He may be right, because not only is he out of qualifying, but there's not much time left for everyone else. Fortunately, it's a very short lap, so everyone should be able to get one more run in. George Russell, just watching the replay, goes for the final corner, carrying way too much speed. loses the back end into the wall, the back of the car. George should be absolutely fine. He hit the car at the back. He wasn't traveling too fast when he was slammed on the brakes, made a huge mistake, losing control. And I think Mercedes might be a bit concerned about the state of the gearbox after that one. But George Russell, fortunately, is okay. But that's the end of his qualifying. And we're going to have 2.5 minutes left of qualifying to determine who's going to be on pole position. What a crazy, crazy finale to qualifying we're seeing. Shiro saying, does that just about seal it up for Verstappen? I don't think it will. Purely and simply, 2.5 minutes left to go. There certainly will be a queue at the pit. The lap is about 1 minute, 1 minute 6. Probably if you're coasting, about 1 minute 15, 1 minute 20. So there should be plenty of time for everybody to get out and get their final laps in. But there will certainly be some jostling for position for people to get their final laps in. So we should get enough time for one more run from everybody. But what a shock. Both Mercedes drivers crashing out, separate incidents. Fortunately, both okay. And, well, what can you say? Fernando Alonso managed to get a lap time in up to P7. Probably his qualifying looked over. He will get another free opportunity now to go into the pit lane and come back out. The Ferraris and the 2 Red Bulls had gone out. Disappointingly, won't be able to do their laps. So hopefully they didn't take too much out of their tyres. Just looking at the Mercedes pit wall, very disappointed. It's going to be a lot of work going on to fix those 2 Mercedes cars. Very, very disappointing for them. The only saving grace for George Russell is he may still end up P5 for tomorrow's sprint race. Incredible stuff. So we've got a red flag now after George Russell's incident. We're going to have to wait a little bit longer now to see the finale to qualifying, guys. So ask the questions away if you want to have a discussion point. I do have a few things normally I talk about during these red flag segments. But yeah, if there's anything you want to know or anything you want to ask about F1 or on the show in general, just let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to answer those questions for you. But crazy stuff going on right now. As I said, fortunately, George Russell's okay. That's the most important thing. The car doesn't look too bad. But unfortunately, it's going to be some work for the Mercedes guys to get both of the cars ready for the race tomorrow. IFST Simulator saying it's windy out there. Yeah, a lot of drivers have been complaining about the winds, and that could have played a part, really, the crosswinds at the back end of George Russell's car. But he carried a lot of speed into those corners. So, yeah, rather interesting stuff. Very, very strange. Can't remember the last time I saw both Mercedes crash out in qualifying or even in general on their own incidents. But, and there was, so turn 10 incident involving Russell noted entering the track without permission. Not quite sure what that's about. But very, very odd indeed. We'll have to wait and see what the stewards say on that one. But, yeah, very, very strange stuff. But let us know your thoughts, guys, on that incident with George Russell. For those of you that did see it, let us know what you thought about that one. We just got a couple of minutes left to go, but currently we're in a red flag. No indication as to when the session will restart, although Russell's Mercedes was cleared up very, very quickly. So it shouldn't be too long before we get going for the final part of qualifying. Well, everyone will get one run. Russell going into the final corner. As I said, probably a bit windy. Fair enough on that one, but carried a lot of speed in that final corner, and he was looking like he was trying to make up time. But he will not be happy. I can see on the replay there. So George Russell, yeah, he just walked across the circuit after the crash. Obviously, the stewards will not be happy with that, but it was during a red flag session. It was just after the pit lane, so it's not for me to say, but it wasn't really in any sort of serious danger unless someone made a mistake and carried on round. So I suppose that's probably what they're looking at. Session will restart 18:80 local time. So just under 5 minutes from now, another little wait before we get going for the final part of qualifying. We've got Christian Horner on the pit wall, looking into the garages, making sure everything is as it should be at Red Bull. We've got Mattia Binotto at Ferrari. Very tightly poised right now between Red Bull and Ferrari. We've got Max Verstappen on pole at the moment, provisionally. Charles Leclerc P2, Carlos Sainz P3 for Ferrari. Sergio Perez in P4, although that is very much provisional, owing to him getting through after cutting the corner at turn 8 in Q2. George Russell, despite being out of qualifying, in P5. And then we have Ocon and Alonso, 6 and 7. And then, of course, we have the remaining, just got to check this right. So I got it because the leaderboard's gone. So I just have to remind myself who else is in this. And Kevin Magnussen, how could I forget? K-Mag, P8. So Lewis Hamilton, P9, although that's probably going to end up being P10 after Mick Schumacher sets a lap time. You've got the Dutch fans in the grandstand, a lot of Max Verstappen Red Bull fans in there. Now, of course, not one to condone cheering when a driver crashes. But right now, I'm sure they'll be very happy that the Mercedes guys are having problems. And their man, currently on provisional pole position. And, you know, on the subject of booing drivers and some of the stuff that's been going on out there, I've never been a fan of it. I do feel like some fans in recent years have been taking liberties with this one. It's been going on for a long time, you know, for quite a few years now. I've never really been a big fan of it. I know people want to express their content, but also their discontent for some drivers that they don't like from others. But as I said, I'm not surprised that this is happening. I think from what we saw at Silverstone, when we saw a lot of fans booing Max Verstappen and some of the things that they were saying to him, I'm pretty sure a lot of those Dutch fans that didn't turn up to Silverstone probably watched that and probably felt, well, if they're going to do it, we're going to do it when we go to the race, which of course is not the right attitude to have, but unfortunately, this is what seems to be happening right now. The gap to Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen right now, IFSD Simulator, yeah, literally just under a tenth. I can see in the chat that Shiro's put it down very, very kindly for us. 0.91 of a tenth of a second right now. So it's hardly anything to call between the two of them at the moment. But yes, we'll have to wait and see. Just over 2 minutes now before we get underway. Hopefully we won't have any more red flags. I feel at this point, if there is another red flag, that will most likely be the end of qualifying, because we are literally on the limit right now in terms of the amount of time left before qualifying is up. But as I said, reconfirming the order as it stands provisionally, we have Max Verstappen on provisional pole, Charles Leclerc 0.09 of a second off Max, Sainz in P3, Perez P4, Russell P5, although Russell will not partake in qualifying anymore after his accident, Ocon and Alonso 6th and 7th, Magnussen in 8th, Hamilton in 9th, although that's very provisional at this point, and Mick Schumacher in P10. Russell has 3.5 tenths to Esteban Ocon. So unless Ocon pulls something incredible out of the bag on his final run, I think Russell probably will be safe in P5. But he'll be gutted because he was only 0.02 of a second off of Perez. So there was certainly an opportunity of getting on the second row of the grid for Mercedes this afternoon. But as it stands right now, he's going to be starting P5 unless anyone behind him can improve. Although looking at the deficit to them, very unlikely at this point in time. Just over a minute to go before we get started. If you haven't already, guys, and you're new to the stream and you haven't already subscribed to the channel, do consider doing so. Absolutely free to do so. Some great podcast reviews, previews, and plenty of other news and gossip that we love to talk about on the show, as well as live quali watch-alongs like this, and of course the live DNF1 race reviews. And we'll be doing the Austrian Grand Prix race review on Sunday night on the YouTube channel. And of course, our podcast is out on all major podcasting platforms, so if you do prefer to listen to your podcast not on YouTube, you can certainly find us on there. And of course, make sure to give us a nice review. It really helps out the channel, and we couldn't do what we do without the support of you guys. And it absolutely gets us up every day to go and try and do what we do. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much to everyone that has liked, shared, and subscribed to the channel. We absolutely appreciate it. We're just about to get underway now. The clock is counting down. We have 10 seconds to wait before the green light. Everybody queuing up in the pit lane. All the last 8 remaining cars ready to get going as we're about to get going for the final part of qualifying. 2 minutes and 30 seconds on the clock. The 2 Haas's are the first out, led after that by one of the Alpines. Then Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, followed by the other Alpine and the 2 Red Bulls. I think Carlos Sainz, so far the only driver not yet out of the garage, but I'm pretty sure he'll be leaving very, very soon. It could literally be last over the line, getting the best of the track conditions. However, with a little bit of break in the running, it may sort of equalize itself out. Will we get some squabbles between a few drivers trying to jostle for position? Of course, plenty of warming up of the tyres. Looks like it's just going to be one lap pole position shootout now. And this is kind of what it's all about in Formula One. Qualifying, pole position, shootout, one lap, one opportunity to do the best time possible. Of course, this sets the grid for the sprint race tomorrow, which in turn will set the result. Well, the result from that will set the grid for Sunday's race. And they're looking on. Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari coming through turn 4. A lot of pressure. A man that's really risen to the occasion in qualifying this season. Can he do it again? Can he get another pole position? I think in Charles' mind he would like that, but I think he'd much rather be on the top step of the podium tomorrow and Sunday as well, more than a pole position fan. And thank you, Shiro, for the very, very kind words. Really appreciate the support. Glad to have you on board on the channel, and glad to hear that you are enjoying what we do. And hopefully you'll continue to enjoy that in the future. We'll certainly do our best to make that possible. Charles Leclerc now coming down the back straight to start his final lap of the day. Will this be good enough to get himself on pole position now as he goes through turn 1? Everything you feel has to be perfect for him to topple Max Verstappen, as Verstappen now starts his final lap of the qualifying session. It's up to him to see if he can get Max off the pole. Leclerc a 10th off of Max in sector 1. However, it's a personal best for Charles Leclerc. Max getting a bit sketchy on the exit of turn 1 as he approaches turn 3. Leclerc now approaching turn 4. Sainz also improved in sector 1. Verstappen 600ths down on his own time. However, he's still half a tenth faster than Leclerc going into the middle sector now. What can Leclerc do going into sector 2? Someone's gone on the gravel a little bit. Leclerc does not improve in the middle sector. He's still 1.5 tenths down, so he's got work to do. Magnussen up to P7, Schumacher up to P8, Ocon improves but stays 6th fastest. Sainz improves in the middle sector. He's only 800ths off. Verstappen doesn't improve. Leclerc over the line. Is this fast enough for pole? It is fast enough for pole. Charles Leclerc improves. He goes provisional pole. Now Sainz now coming through the final part. Alonso does not improve, stays P9, but Sainz goes second. It's a Ferrari 1-2. Verstappen now has to respond, or he's starting on the second row, and Verstappen goes on pole. 104.9. Max Verstappen pulls it out in the final sector. He is on pole position for tomorrow's sprint. The Max Verstappen fans, the Orange Army, the Red Bull crew, all in a huge roar of eruption and orange flares everywhere as Max Verstappen gets on to the pole position for the first time, I believe, since the Imola Grand Prix. What a lap that must have been. What a final sector that must have been for Max Verstappen, because he looked under pressure. The two Ferraris looked like they pulled something special out of the bag, but it looks like Max Verstappen has got the final say, at least as far as qualifying is concerned. And that's a huge lap from him. Sergio Perez stayed in 4th. However, of course, we should stress that that is very much under consideration from the stewards, of course, after cutting the corner at turn 8 in Q2 to get through to Q3. George Russell, P5, despite his crash. Ocon, 6th. Magnussen and Mick Schumacher, 7th and 8th. What a job from the Haas boys down the back end of the field in Silverstone, and both of them on the 4th row of the grid for tomorrow's sprint race. What a great job from them. Fernando Alonso only in P9, so Lewis Hamilton will have to settle for now for P10, but plenty of time, plenty of work to do. Max, the final sector from Max and Leclerc literally almost identical, and you could say that despite the Ferrari having the pace over the final 2 sectors of the lap, it's really that straight line performance in the first sector that really wins the day for Red Bull and could prove to be quite crucial in the race tomorrow and of course on Sunday. But it looks like that's all we have time for in qualifying. It doesn't seem to be any steward notices or anything about track limits or anything like that, so Max Verstappen will keep that pole position. The only man in the 1-minute 4s right now. So what a result for him. He'll be delighted with that in front of his team's home crowd. Probably a lot more of his own fans than the team's fans anyway. But guys, that is the end of qualifying. Just to sum up the result, Max Verstappen takes, I believe, his 2nd pole position of the season. Of course, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that one. For the sprint race tomorrow, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. Look like they got the Ferraris onto the front row. but alas, Max Verstappen getting the last say. Perez P4, although that's very controversial at this point. Russell P5 despite his crash. Ocon 6th. Magnussen and Mick Schumacher for Haas on the 4th row, 7th and 8th. What a job for them. Alonso 9th and Sir Lewis Hamilton in P10. But guys, thank you so much for joining me on this DNF1 live watch along of the sprint qualifying for Austria. Make sure if you haven't already to subscribe to the channel, like, and of course, we'll be back with our live race review in Austria, which will include stories from the sprint race and the main race on Sunday. So right now, it's very much advantage to the champion, Max Verstappen, with the Ferraris in close pursuit. But until next time, thanks for tuning in, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next live DNF1 video. Take care.